hands down the craziest story I'm ever going to tell you. And before I get into it, it's incredibly important that you remember that everything I'm going to tell you is true and happened exactly this way. In 8th grade, I had a teacher, Mrs. B, and she could read my mind, and I found out the hard way. So I had her for English and history back to back, 7th and 8th period. And my best friend Candy, who lived directly behind me, also had her for English and history back to back, but she had her in the morning. So at lunchtime, we would sit around and we would talk about whatever was going to happen in her class. Like Candy would give me the heads up. Like if we had a pop quiz, she would tell me what the questions are. And about halfway through the school year, I'm looking out the window and there's a little bit of a car accident. Now, Mrs. B can't see that from where she's sitting, but she gets up and she goes to the window and she's like, I hope everybody's okay. And I'm like, that's weird. You couldn't see that. And then another day I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about how I want pizza for dinner. And then she announces to the class, we're going to have pizza for dinner at my house. I'm like, what? But then it started getting more serious. So I hadn't done an English assignment and neither did Candy. And so when we got to lunch that day, I'm like, what happened? Did we have a pop quiz? What's going on? And she's like, no, actually, I don't think anybody did the assignment. So she just lectures the whole time. You don't have anything to worry about. Well, I get to her class and I'm staring at her and I'm like, ha ha ha, you don't know. I didn't do the reading. I'm just going to sit here all period. The bell rings. She looks right at me and she says, take out a piece of paper. Pop quiz. What? But then it got really serious. So one day at the end of class, 8th period, we had a fire drill and we were on the 2nd floor. So we had to go down the hall, down the stairs, up the hill, wait outside, and then come back in, up the stairs to our classroom. So we do all of that. And then she gives us free time because it's the end of the day. And I look over at her and she's like using an inhaler and she's having a hard time breathing. Now I'm like 12 and I'm thinking to myself, you know, if you took better care of yourself, you might not have these breathing issues. And right then she locks eyes with me and starts sobbing. So I freak out and I go home. Now I've been telling my mom all about this along the way and my mom's like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, she can read my mind. I know it. My mom's like, well, then you got to prove it somehow. So we come up with this plan that I'm going to think of a word and I'm going to chant it over and over and over until it drives her insane. And then she's going to have to say something. So I come up with the word popsicles because like, who's going to say the word popsicles? So I go to 7th period and I sit down and I don't tell Candy any of this. Okay. So I get to 7th period and I sit down and I don't say the word out loud, but popsicles, popsicles, popsicles in my head over and over. We get a break. We come back 8th period. I'm not even listening to the assignment. I'm just thinking popsicles, popsicles, popsicles. Now I know that I've never said the word out loud. So the time at the end of the day is like dwindling down and it becomes like 10 minutes before the end of the class period. Mrs. B says, hey, don't you have to go get Candy? She had broken her ankle and I was like her buddy to like meet her at her locker and help her get out of the school building and into our carpool before all the kids came and like trampled her. So I was like, oh yeah, is it okay if I pack up now? She's like, yeah, get out of here. So I get all my stuff and I'm walking to the door and Mrs. B goes over to the window and she's sitting down and she's looking out the window and she says, you know, class. And I stop and I look at her because that's respectful. And she says, with all of this snow and ice outside, I really wanna... And she snaps her head and she locks eyes with me and she enunciates the word popsicle. I swear to you, I swear that happened. She doesn't just say the word popsicle. She enunciates it. Popsicle while locking eyes with me. Okay. I feel the blood rushing out of my body. I just back out of the class, book it down the hall, get down the stairs, get to Candy's locker. Again, I'm like 12, 13 years old. I have a freak out. I'm like, popsicle. She said popsicle. We can't go to school anymore. She can hear her thoughts. Oh my gosh, we have to quit. We have to quit. Candy's like, what are you talking about? So I try to fill her and I try to explain it. She's like, this does not make sense. I get to the carpool. The carpool mom is there. I tell her the whole story. She's like, you must have misunderstood this woman. I'm like, I did not misunderstand her. Every person that gets in the car, I tell them the story. They also think I'm crazy. I'm like, no, we need a petition. We need to talk to the principal. We need to remove ourselves. I'm never going back to her class. So we get home. This is before cell phones. I get to the house, I drop my backpack, I book it to the landline, I call my mom, my ally, and I tell her, she said popsicle. My mom's like, no way. I'm like, what do you mean no way? Why would I lie about that? My mom's like, this is just too crazy, like, there must be a misunderstanding. Also, I'm at work, I can't talk to you, I'll be home in a little while. So in the meantime, I call every person I know. If I have your phone number, I'm calling you to tell you the story. And if you're not there, I tell whoever picked up the phone the entire story. Okay. I run out of people to call. I get the phone book. I get to the white pages. I'm just flipping through, calling whoever I can. If it's the wrong number, I don't care. I'm telling you the story. I see my elderly neighbor. She's out on her porch. I go pay her a visit. I tell her the story. Nobody believes me. Everybody thinks I'm crazy. My mom comes home. She sits me down. She's like, okay, start at the beginning. I tell her the whole thing. And she's just like, huh. I like honestly don't know what to tell you at this point. And I'm like, you can tell me I'm not going back to school because I'm not, and I'm definitely not going to her class. And I'm talking to the principal and my mom's like, whoa, none of that is happening. You are going back to school. We're not calling the principal. Like, this is just like, I don't know. You're just gonna have to move on with your life. Okay. This is just one of those life things. And I'm like, you're crazy. So I took a shower. I go to bed. I'm like crying myself to sleep. The world does not understand me. My mom knocks the door. She comes in to check on me and she's like, I just want to see how you're doing. And I'm like, how am I doing? I'm in 8th grade. My teacher can hear my thoughts. How do you think I'm doing? You can take me to school, but I am not going to her class. Just so that we're clear, you can drop me off, but you can't make me go. And Mom's like, okay, this is getting out of hand. I'm like, yeah, I know. Thank you. And she says, yeah, so the thing is, today, during her lunch period, I called Mrs. B to see if she wanted to play a joke on you. Yep. My own mother. My own mother. And just to recap, my mother called my 8th grade teacher to tell her that I thought that she could read my mind. She gave her all of that information. And then they went through with the prank. Yep.
Storytime on how I found my daughter without even looking for her. When I was 15, I got pregnant by who I thought was the love of my life. But as soon as he found out that I was pregnant, he said he didn't want anything to do about it and that if I wanted, I could get an abortion. I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking about it. I decided to tell my mom. I was scared at first, but then I remembered my mom and I have a really, really good relationship. And she told me I had 3 options. I could have the baby, I could have an abortion, or I could have the baby and give it up for adoption. I decided to have the baby, which later on I found out it was a girl, and then give her up for adoption because I wasn't going to be able to give her the life that she deserved. And I said that maybe in the future, I would look for her, explain to her what happened, and tell her that I could be a part of her life if she wanted me to. Well, in 2015, I was able to open my own little coffee shop where I hired 3 employees. By that time, I was married and had 2 wonderful toddlers. Well, from the 3 employees that I hired, one of them was my daughter, but I didn't know it at the time. Well, since it was a small business with only 3 employees and me, I had a close relationship with employees. But I had a close relationship with, let's call her, Julia. The reason why we had such a close relationship was because she did share with me that she was adopted. And obviously I shared with her that I did give up a baby for adoption. And she never judged me. She always told me that she would do anything to find her biological mother. This girl was raised right. Well, I shared with her all the details on why I gave my baby up for adoption and that I would love to meet that baby one day. Well, behind my back, she decided to investigate. I don't know how, don't ask me. 3 months later, she came in with some paperwork, told me that she was my daughter, with tears in her eyes. And well, I obviously busted out crying as well. I asked her to forgive me and I told her why it all happened. She told me those weren't sad tears, they were tears of joy. Said she never hated me and now we're in each other's lives. How crazy.
In high school, one of my friends told me that my brother's girlfriend had cheated on him, and then my friend said, but whatever you do, you can't tell your brother, because Becky feels really bad about what she did, and it's her truth to tell, okay? So she'll tell him as soon as she's ready to. And I was like, don't worry, I won't tell him anything. And then I told him, because I wasn't about to let him walk around looking stupid when everybody else already knew that she had cheated on him, especially because he was headed to a party that night, and I just wanted him to know what he was walking into. So I was driving him to his party and I was like, so how are you and Becky doing? And he was like, oh, we're doing so good. Becky and I are better than we've ever been. And I said, that's great, man, because I heard this crazy rumor that I heard that she cheated on you or something. And he said, oh, with Anthony Leibowitz? Yeah, I know about that. It was last summer and we just got into this huge fight, so we were kind of technically sort of on a break, and I'm okay with it now. And I said, oh, that is new information for me, because what I was told was that she cheated on you with Jason Murray, and then I heard it was last week. And he got dead quiet. He didn't say anything for 5 minutes. So finally I said, would you rather we just skip the bonfire and I could take you to get ice cream instead? And he was like, no, Kate, I don't want ice cream. Okay, I'm not a child. I'm 16 years old. And I was like, sorry. And we kept driving and I dropped him off at the beach. And then I went home and 2 of my friends were at my house. And I was like, man, it is about to go down. I just told brother that Becky's cheating on him and he is pissed. She came running up to our car and she was like, hi. And he was like, no. And I really wish I'd stayed to see the whole thing. And my friend said, wow, wouldn't it be so cool to be a fly on the wall for that breakup? It's going to get crazy. And then I don't know how my friends and I came to this decision, but we decided to drive back down to the beach and hide in the bushes and spy on him while he broke up with his girlfriend. And we all put on black clothes and beanies and sunglasses because we were like, this is what spies wear. And we sped off to the beach to try and make it in time, but then we got pulled over by a cop, and the cop was like, do you have any idea how fast you were going? And I was like, I'm sorry, officer. We were just really wired because we were listening to a lot of One Direction really loudly, and we wanted to make it to the beach in time to watch my brother dump his cheating girlfriend. And the cop was like, well, slow down. And then we made it to the beach, but they didn't even fight. They just made up and started making out. And we were like, oh man, we got all dressed up in our fancy outfits for this. And then his girlfriend noticed me in the bushes, but she didn't recognize me, probably because of my fancy spy outfit. And she looked at me and she was like, sorry, honey, he's taken. And I was like, okay, first off, ew. Second of all, call me honey again and I will put laxatives in your drink at Thanksgiving.
Story time on how I got revenge on my best friend for sleeping with my boyfriend. So back in June 2019, I was on Tinder. That's where I met my boyfriend. We hit it off right away. And obviously, you know, I shared the details with my best friend. Or so I thought she was my best friend. Well, at that time, she was also on Tinder. My best friend is bi, by the way. Well, 3 months into my relationship, I started having a gut feeling about her. Let's call her Sarah. Every time my boyfriend came over, she started acting weird. And when I say weird, I mean she was acting all flirtatious with him. But again, I didn't think anything of it because she's my best friend. Well, one day I invited her for dinner. And I also invited my boyfriend. By the way, this dinner was at my house. And for that dinner, I wore a dress. Just because it was a special dinner for my friend and my boyfriend. And she wore a cocktail dress. Like a dress that you would wear to a casino. Well, I pulled her aside, told her that her dress was extra. Well, she said that I was crazy because that was just a normal dress. She told me not to be jealous because I was her best friend. I explained to her that I wasn't jealous, but that I've seen her actions in front of my boyfriend, and they're very concerning. Well, whatever. We decided to have dinner, we had a good time. She left and my boyfriend stayed over. And I had to work. Well, he was gonna stay over and wait for me to get home from work. The next day, I head off to work. When I got back, I saw my best friend's car outside, ran inside to my apartment, found them hooking up, broke up with him, but here's the good part. I decided to get back at her. I opened up a Tinder as a girl looking for a serious relationship because I know that's what she wanted. I matched with her. We messaged for about 6 months. She was deeply in love with me. She was even talking about moving in together and she didn't even know me in person. We decided to schedule a date where we would move in together. She paid for a deposit and everything for the apartment. Well, that day came and well, obviously I never showed up. How embarrassing for her.
Okay, story time about how the love of my life used me to get closer to my best friend. I feel like I've had this happen before where like a boy used me to get closer to one of my friends. Not a nice feeling. Okay, so a little background information. I was 16, about to be 17 years old, and this all happened in my sophomore year of high school. But first, we are going to go back in time to whenever I was in 6th grade, because that is whenever I met the love of my life, Dominic. Before y'all say shit about my relationship slash obsession slash boyfriend who didn't know that he was my boyfriend at the time, I do know that I loved him because to this day I have never felt anything even remotely close to what I felt with him with anyone else. I don't know if I worded that correctly, but you get the point. And Dominic and I met at a mutual friend's birthday party that was being thrown at the zoo, and we didn't talk for the entire party. I mean, granted, we were only like 12, but until they started handing out souvenirs. And by handing out souvenirs, I mean, so there was like this penguin show, right? They're standing up on stage with the penguins, you know, they're doing cool tricks with the fucking penguins, and then they're like, we have a gift, we have surprises for you guys, and they start throwing souvenirs into the fucking crowd. And like, I don't even know how tall you are as a 12-year-old, but I was not tall, but I ended up catching one of these, which took a lot of fucking work. But as soon as I get my hands on it, Dominic wants to come over and snatch that shit out of my hands. So I'm holding on one side, he's holding on the other. I'm crying, screaming bloody murder. And then both of our mothers came over to us and they're like, if you guys can't learn how to share, neither of you can have the toy. So for the rest of the party, both of us are literally just like fucking sitting there, each holding this toy in one of our hands. We're just staring at each other. Like, at the end of the party, nobody got to keep the toy because we were still crying and fighting over it at the end. But then we became best friends. Eventually him and I started going over each other's houses every day, and then we started sitting on the bus together because I literally had no idea that he was even on my school bus. Probably because I only sat in the front 2 seats of the bus because I was always scared of like the 7th and 8th graders that were in the back of the bus. But I was like a little tomboy, you know. We would play Minecraft and we would go and play in the fucking woods with sticks and rocks, and we would literally do this every single day after school. Literally every single day after school. But whenever we got into 7th grade, that is whenever Dominic started acting different. He became friends with this group of boys and girls who of course were known as the popular kids, and I did want to hang out with Dominic and his new friends, but the issue is I definitely did not fit or even look the part to be friends with these kids. And yes, in 7th grade you have to fit in with the popular kids. It starts that young, you know, because they all had the new trendy clothes, shoes, they were able to afford to have huge birthday parties at certain places, and then, you know, they wouldn't invite any of the kids that couldn't afford to go, just shit like that, which is really sad. But yeah, and then all the popular boys liked all of the popular girls. They would always have their nails done and their hair done, and some of them even started doing their makeup. Like, we're in 7th grade, what are you doing? I mean, I'm not judging, but still. And myself, on the other hand, I was a tomboy. I liked playing video games and getting dirty outside, and I didn't care what kind of clothes or shoes that I wore. And because Dominic and I have been best friends for the past year, I thought that this wouldn't affect our friendship, and I thought that he still would have liked me for who I was. But this definitely did affect our friendship. He would never talk to me in school, let alone acknowledge me, because once we got on that bus, it's like a whole new Dominic entered the fucking chat. Like, two-faced as fuck. You know, we would sit together, laugh, and play, and, you know, I would get off at his bus stop, we would go to his house after school. I'll never forget the one day that he was like super mean to me, and like the day that he cut me off, because the one day him and his mom were supposed to come and get me after school, right? Well, his mom was supposed to grab both of us after school because my mom wasn't going to be at home to drive me to his house after school. And I'd never been picked up from the school before, so I had no idea where to go, or if it looks like I'm crying, I'm literally just yawning so much right now. So I decided that I was going to meet him at his locker, so that way we could both just walk to the office together. Well, when I got there, I am standing like 10 feet away from his lockers. Like, here's his lockers. I'm standing on the other side of the wall, just kind of sitting there, like, you know, against the wall, looking at my feet, you know, waiting. All of his friends are standing around him, and then all of his friends turn around and they look me up and down, and then they turn back to him and they're like, yeah, dude, we'll see you later. And then like all of them were like kind of punching him on the arm, and then, you know, walking away laughing and just like looking back at me. Wasn't a good feeling. And then that's whenever Dominic looked at me and he like rolled his eyes and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you here? Like, why wouldn't you just meet me at the front? Like, oh my god, you're so annoying. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I didn't know where to go. And that was like really hurtful and weird to me because he's never acted like that towards me, you know? He's never been like a tick like that. So whenever we got to his house that day, I asked him about it. I was like, why don't you talk to me in school anymore, and why were you really mean to me today? And he was like, because I made new friends. Is that a problem? He's like, we literally hang out every single day. I should be allowed to make new friends. And I'm like, okay, sure, fine. Okay. But why did you talk to me the way that you did today? Because it actually really hurt my feelings and you were being really mean. And he was like, because you're so annoying. Like, how do you not know where the front of the building is, and how do you not know to go there and then just get a pass and then leave? So at that point, I decided to speak my truth. I was like, I think you're embarrassed to be seen with me because you don't want your cool friends knowing that you hang out with a loser. And he was like, I never said that. Why are you putting words in my mouth? He was like, I never said that, not once. And I was like, well, it's true. Like, why else wouldn't you want to hang out with me? And he was like, did you ever think that maybe you're too much to handle sometimes? Like, maybe I just don't want to talk to you because I actually get a break from you whenever I'm hanging out with my other friends. So then I'm like, okay, well, why do you invite me over if I'm really such that like a pain in the ass? And he was like, because I feel bad. If you don't have me to hang out with, then you don't have any other friends. What a little asshole. Oh my god. I swear to god, little kids are literally like fucking barbaric. You little shits. Be nice to each other. Oh my god. So then after that, he just randomly walked upstairs, and then 5 minutes later his mom came down and she was like, hey honey, Dominic's not feeling good. I'm gonna take you home, okay? Which was really weird because he didn't even tell me, you know, that he wasn't feeling good, which I knew why he fucking went upstairs. It's not because he wasn't feeling good, it's because this kid was fucking pissed off at me. Like, okay, Dominic, fucking ridiculous. After that, he never asked me to hang out again. He stopped sitting with me on the bus. Actually, he stopped riding the bus in general because he got his mom to drive him every single day to and from school. And it really sucked because I also really liked Dominic, not just as a friend, obviously from what you guys could tell at the beginning of the story what I said, but I thought that maybe Dominic liked me, or maybe had a crush on me, because he wouldn't hang out with these friends after school or those popular girls after school. He would hang out with me. So I thought I was like special in a way, which sounds really sad now that I'm saying it out loud. And I always knew that I wasn't as pretty as other girls, okay? So I wasn't completely surprised or upset whenever I saw him showing interest in other girls. Also, there were some things that Dominic was into and I wasn't, vice versa. Like, I liked reading. Reading, one of my favorite things to do, right? I also liked playing an instrument, you know, just like nerdy shit. So I definitely didn't expect him to have a crush on me, but I was hopeful that he did, even though I know the chances were like very tiny. Yep. So yeah, pretty much for the next few years, it was him hanging out with these new friends and going to all these parties, and eventually he was named one of the hottest guys in the school, and then he wasn't named that because he kind of got a little ugly there for a second, and then he was back to being the hottest guy in the school. And by one of the hottest guys in the school, I mean like there were a few, and of course they were all in the same fucking friend group. So Dominic was friends with all the other hottest guys in the school, and of course they were all popular. And these weren't your regular popular kids, you know, the ones that everybody wants to be friends with and everybody's jealous of. No, these were ones that were really mean, and they were the ones that would go out of their way to literally make your life a living hell. Now see, I always knew like there was that group of kids in school, but I don't ever remember any of them going out of their way to make myself or anybody else feel bad, if that makes sense. I also did try to apologize to Dominic once, which was probably that summer, the summer before 8th grade. I was walking my dog and I was walking back to my house and I saw him and one of his friends riding their bike around my neighborhood. And I went into the house and, you know, put the leash up and I'm about to go upstairs and my mom is like, oh my goodness, and then runs outside. I look out the door and one of them had fell off of their bike and scraped their knee. And while they're standing out there, my mom's like, hey, you stay out here with them. I'm gonna go inside and grab some band-aids. And his friend's like, oh my God, dude, I just lost my chain. And then like, you know, he's looking around the fucking cul-de-sac for it, you know? And Dominic is just sitting there, you know, staring at the ground. And I'm like, hey, like, I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry for things that I said. I really miss you and I really wish that we were still friends. And he just like looks up at me and I'm like, so I just wanted to say I'm sorry and I would really like it if we could be friends again. And my mom comes back out with the band-aid and she puts it on his knee and then he gets up and he thanks my mom and, you know, he just kind of looks at me and then he drives away on his bike. And then he fucking falls off of it 5 seconds later because that bike is too big for him. I'm happy he fell off of his bike with his fucking 5-foot ass. You're fucking gross. And I want to be your friend anyways. I forgot how mean kids can be, okay? I feel like maybe things would have gotten better now because of people becoming more aware that words hold power, you know? And I feel like TikTok is like, you know, part to blame for a lot of things, but also part to thank, you know, for bringing awareness to certain situations. Like, I didn't realize how important mental health awareness was until TikTok videos were popping up on my For You page about mental health. And then I went and saw a psychiatrist and figured out my mental health stuff. Completely off topic, but all I'm saying is you would hope that kids now would think that, you know, and actually realize that words have power. I say that, but then this girl, never mind. I'm not even gonna say it. Anyway, so fast forward to my sophomore year in high school. I haven't talked to Dominic in almost 4 years, and I'm definitely not the same girl that I used to be. I low-key do my hair now, and that's literally all I do. I don't do the makeup, I just do my hair, which I never thought I would do. If younger me could see me now, she would be absolutely disgusted. But I also started making new friends, and I was friends with a group of girls who were known as hoes, and you are who you hang out with, which I'm not saying that as in you really are who you hang out with. It's just saying that, like, if you hang out with a bunch of kids that do bad shit, you are also going to be labeled as a kid who does bad shit. Anyways, back to my situation. I really didn't feel like I had a glow up. Like, I didn't have one where you purposely have a glow up, you know, you get your hair dyed, you get your nails done, you get your eyebrow waxed, you know, you get all that shit done. No, pretty much what happened over this summer, it wasn't even over the past few years, it was over this summer. I got a fat ass. That is what happened. And I pretty much had like the ideal body shape for women that women want, and that is like up to beauty standards nowadays. So when I went back to school, I had every single guy hitting me up and asking me to hang out, and obviously I knew that it was not for the reason that they just wanted to get to know me and they really liked me. I knew they only wanted to have one thing from me. But it was kind of nice to have some male attention because I never really had any guys put their focus on me, even if it was in a bad way. And there was this girl who we're gonna call Melissa, okay? Melissa was really pretty, okay? But she used a lot of people. She was a user. Yes. For example, if you were dating a really hot guy and she had feelings for that guy, she was gonna become friends with you so that way she can hang out with you and your boyfriend and in the end, snatch your boyfriend from you. Which sounds super fucked up and it 100% is, okay? But back to her. She was really good looking. So I don't really know why she thought she had to do that. And anytime that she did do it, 9 times out of the 10, the guys would leave their girlfriends and date her for a little bit, and then she would break up with them because she would get bored and then she would move on to another guy. Like, she was literally perfect. And hear me out, okay? I'm not saying that it's all about how a girl's body looks, because I hate those fucking standards coming from somebody who literally gets used for their body 24/7, and I see other girls that don't. But there's not one genuine guy who wants to go on a date with me or get to know me rather than do the nasty with me and then tell all of his friends about it, so that way all of his friends try to get with me next. But Melissa was the type of girl, she was super skinny, she didn't have anything upstairs or anything downstairs, not packing anything in the front or in the back, but she was literally like pretty to the point where guys didn't care about that. Like, they literally just thought that she was really pretty for her face. So I think that when she would do this shit, it was more of an insecurity thing because she could get any guy that she wanted. It's just that she wanted guys that other girls had, I think. Like, she would try to become best friends with the girls who guys were obsessed with at the time, the girls who were trends in school at the time, so that way she could hang out with all of these guys. I mean, to be honest, I wish I could have switched positions with her because I definitely would rather have somebody like me for my face and my personality rather than my fucking fat ass. So anyways, Melissa and I became really good friends, and I knew the only reason why she wanted to hang out with me was because I had a lot of attention from all these guys for all of the wrong reasons. And I mean, it's low-key sad because I did consider her a best friend, but I also knew that the only reason why she was hanging out with me was because of the guys, and if I didn't have those guys there, like, fawning over me, she wouldn't have wanted to be my friend in the first place. To be honest, I think actually a week before we became friends, I heard that she hated me because of all the guys that like hung around me. She called me a pick-me girl because yeah, she called me a pick-me girl pretty much. And whenever her and I became best friends, she's like, oh, we should hang out with these guys and this group of guys and that group of guys. And I told her, I was like, listen sis, we can hang out with whoever the fuck you want, you can have whoever you want, but stay away from Dom. Stay away from him. Don't go near him. Don't go near Dom. Don't do it. Period. I was like, you can have whoever the fuck you want. I don't care. So anyways, back to my dilemma. Like I said, my body pretty much changes overnight. And I decided that I'm gonna start dressing a little bit more flattering for my body, a little bit more like a whore. But how the fuck else do you dress up a fat ass? I don't know. I'm not gonna wear fucking khakis, even though khakis actually really do make your butt look really good. Not the point. The one day I wore a crop top, a tight crop top with an oversized hoodie, and then I wore some, so you know, my mom took me out shopping one week and I got some really cute clothes, and the one day I came into school wearing a tight crop top with an oversized hoodie and a mini skirt, which I definitely should have gotten in trouble for and almost did get in trouble for like 4 times. But at this point, I'm not even gonna lie, I low-key even have the teachers staring at me. Yes, that made me feel uncomfortable. But it is what it is. I mean, the girl teachers would be like, I think that skirt is too short, blah 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 blah, you need to go to the principal's office. But then, you know, the guy teachers would be like, no, I think she's fine, you know, it's fingertip length. And since I was wearing an oversized hoodie, I literally would like fucking, like, you know how like whenever you're like they ask you to put your arms down to see if they're like your shorts are fingertip length, and you go like this, like, yeah, they're fingertip length, they're so fingertip length, I swear to God. Yeah, that was me. So after school that day, I have all these guys adding me on Snapchat, following me on Instagram, texting me. I don't even know how half of them got my number. And even Dominic added me, but I didn't add him back because I was like still really upset at him for that shit in 7th grade and 6th grade. So yes, I still hold a fucking grudge, bitch. And one more thing about Melissa, it was really weird that Melissa wanted to be friends with me, because yeah, she only wanted to be friends with me because of the boys, but like these boys weren't even fucking cute. Like they were all fugly. Like it was the guys that knew they weren't good enough, like good looking enough to get with the pretty girls, so they were trying to get with the average looking girls, aka me. But not to take them out or anything like that, it was just so you could sleep with them, you know. So the one day I'm standing at my locker with Melissa, her and I are talking and laughing, and then Dominic all of a sudden comes up like, ew, bye, get the fuck away from me. Anyway, so he's asking how I'm doing, acting as if he really cares. So then I look at Melissa and she's like, hey, I'm gonna go get a drink real quick, I'll be back. And then Dominic's like, hey, like, why didn't you add me on Snapchat? Like, it's been so long since we've talked and I miss you. And I'm like, I thought you never wanted to talk to me again. And he's like, really, like, that was so long ago. Like, I don't hold a grudge against you for that stuff, and I don't think you should hold a grudge against me either. Like, how fucking gross. I literally hate men. But of course I still added him back on Snapchat. But for what? Because this man literally would never Snapchat me unless I posted a picture that I was hanging out with Melissa on my story. Like, he didn't even fucking Snapchat me back after I added him the first time to be like, hey, like, I miss you, blah blah blah, sorry for everything that happened, da 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 da. Like, no, he didn't want to talk, he didn't miss me, he wanted to get with Melissa, and he wanted to use me to get closer to her. I low-key knew that, but I was talking myself out of knowing it, so that way I wouldn't get my feelings hurt. And then the one day he swiped up on my story and he was like, hey, like, I want do you want to hang out? And I was like, sure. And he was like, oh, is Melissa still with you? And I was like, no, why does that matter? And I knew that if he felt like, and I knew that he knew if he would have said some dumb shit, I would have cut him off right then and there and literally never hung out with him again, and he never would have saw Melissa ever again. I would have made sure of it. So he's like, oh, no, I just didn't want her to feel like a third wheel, you know, because if it's me and you hanging out, I wouldn't be surprised if she would feel like a third wheel, ha ha ha. So I go over to his house and, you know, we're sitting in his basement and we're talking, catching up, not really catching up, you know, kind of just like it's awkward. And I think he's making it awkward on purpose. You know how whenever somebody could talk to you and like make conversation with you, like it's possible, but instead they're literally forcing it to be awkward. They're like, yeah, I know. Oh, I did this over the summer. Not a, what did you do over the summer? How are you? How was your family? No, it was exactly like that. And then he was like, do you want to watch a movie? And I'm like, sure. So, you know, we sit on the couch, we're watching a movie, and one thing leads to another, and we end up doing the fucking nasty. So disappointed at myself. And then I end up catching feelings for him all over again, even worse than I did the fucking first time. But after that, I would try and text him and Snapchat him literally throughout the day, and he would never answer me. And then finally I text him and I'm like, so did you just want to do the nasty and never speak to me again, or did you actually want to talk to me and hang out like we used to, like you said? And he was like, no, not at all. He was like, I've just been super busy with school and practice and stuff like that. Like, I'm really busy right now, but we should hang out later. But I'm literally gonna cut it short for you guys. Pretty much what was happening is we would do the nasty. He would invite me over to his house to hang out. We would hang out for like 5 minutes talking, and then we would put on a movie, and then we would do the nasty. And then I would be the first one to text him after, asking when he wanted to hang out again. And yeah, I knew that he was using me just to do this. Now, I kept asking to go over to his house though, because even though I knew I was being used, I wanted to hang out with him, and that was the only way to hang out with him. And the only time that he would ask me to hang out is whenever he thought that I was hanging out with Melissa. Like, he would literally swipe up my story and he'd be like, hey, what are you doing right now? And I'd be like, oh, I'm hanging out. And he'd be like, are you with Melissa? And I'm like, no. And he was like, oh, well, good, because I wanted you to come over and I wanted us to hang out. I'm like, dude, at this point, just save me the fucking heartache. Just save me the fucking heartache. Just tell me the damn truth. It's not worth it. Eventually, it got to the point where whenever I would go over there, it wouldn't be we would have small talk and then watch a movie and then do the nasty. No, it got to the point where literally I would knock on the door, he would go answer the door, we would go upstairs to his room, and we would literally get on the bed, do the nasty, and then I would leave because he would go and hang out with his friends right after. Or he would be like, oh, I have practice, or oh, my family and I are going to visit my grandma, so could you walk home? He would make me walk home. He wouldn't even like offer to drive me. Like, bitch. What the fuck? So as you can imagine, this made me feel absolutely fucking terrible about myself, and my self-esteem literally was fucking 6 feet under, literally. Especially whenever I found out that he would text Melissa all fucking day. Yeah, he was texting Melissa all fucking day. Melissa and I are sitting at lunch the one day, and you know, she goes and takes her tray up to the fucking garbage, and I'm sitting there and I look over and her phone is fucking blowing the fuck up, and I didn't even like expect that it was fucking Dom, because I knew that Dom liked her, but I had no, like, Dom wouldn't have kept asking me if I was with her so he could hang out with her. Instead, he would have just asked her if they wanted to hang out, because he's the type of person where if you aren't talking to him and giving him the same energy back, he'll try to give you that energy, but in subtle ways. Like, you know, he couldn't ask her to hang out, so he would ask me to see if I was hanging out with her, so that way he could hang out with both of us. Anyway, so like I said, her phone is blowing up, and I, you know, grab her phone and kind of look at it, and it's fucking Dom. And he's not just double or triple texting her. No, he texted her 10 times in a fucking row. 10 times in a row. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that you and Dom talk. And she was like, girl, I don't talk to him. She was like, he texts me. And then she, like, you know, shows me the messages, and he's like, OMG, hey, by the way, I remember you saying that you like this one band and their concert's coming. They're gonna be having a concert that's like 10 minutes away from us. Would you want to go? Like, what the fuck? And like I said, Melissa didn't like Dom, so I had no reason to be fucking mad at her. It literally was all him. Like, she liked the guys that would hang around me during every single one of my fucking classes, because at first it was the ones that weren't cute enough to be with any really, really pretty girls. And then number two, it was the popular guys that were in love with my fat ass that would hang around me all day. So fast forward, for the first time in 2 weeks, Dominic came up to me the one day in school. He walked up to my locker, and Melissa was talking to me. And whenever she saw him walking up to my locker, she was like, hey, yeah, I'll see you later. And I turn around and I see him walking, and I'm like, of course. And then as soon as he saw her walking away, he went to turn around and walk the other way. And I was like, hey, did you need something? And he was like, oh, like, no, I was just gonna ask if you wanted to come over after school today, but I forgot I have a bunch of stuff to do, so maybe tomorrow. So I'm starting to really connect the dots that he only likes me for Melissa. So the one day I asked her if I could test a little theory and if I could come over to her house. So I posted a picture of me and her hanging out, you know, the one day, to see if Dom would ask me to hang out, knowing that she's with me. But I also decided that I was gonna ask him to hang out first, okay? And of course I get no response. And I had asked him like an hour before I posted that picture with Melissa on my story, even though I already low-key knew in the back of my head what was gonna happen. And I was right. He looked at my story, and then he slid up and he was like, yo, do you want to hang out? And he caught it literally 5 minutes after I posted it, so he knew that we were still together. So at this point I texted him and I'm like, hey, like, I know you're using me to get closer to her. And he's like, no, what are you talking about? I was like, okay, then why can't we just hang out? And he's like, no, we can't. He was like, I've just seriously been busy. I was like, all right, whatever, then I'm coming over today. And he was like, okay, that's fine. And I was like, and we're not doing the nasty. I was like, we can actually hang out. So, you know, he's like, all right, whatever, that's fine. You know, obviously he seemed pissed off about it. And then, you know, I'm at his house and he went to the bathroom and I'm sitting on the couch and I see his phone keeps going off from one of his friends, Jake. So I open up his phone. Yes, I have no fucking shame. I opened up his phone and it was text messages between him and Jake. And he was like, yeah, dude, he was like, I'm spending time with her because she thinks that I'm fucking using her to get closer to Melissa. He was like, I am, but like, bruh. He's like, to be honest, I don't even want to be here. Like, she's so fucking gross. I don't even want to fuck her. Yeah. He was like, I'm literally just doing that so that way I can hang out with Melissa. So at that point, I'm really upset and I grab all my shit and I leave his phone open so that way he can see that I saw the messages and hopefully he'll feel bad, but he didn't. So yeah, I was really upset about that. And then, oh, here's the kicker. You want to know the kicker? Literally a week later, Melissa's like, I don't want you to be mad at me. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I kind of have feelings for Dom. And I was like, bitch, you know everything that he's put me through. Why do you have feelings for him? And she was like, yeah, but I just think it's really sweet how, like, you know, he was trying to get to me like that whole entire time. Like, if you don't want to be friends with me anymore, I completely understand. And I was like, yeah, I didn't want to be friends with her, but then again, I had no other friends. So I was still friends with her, but her and Dom literally started dating and they would hang out right in front of me. Like, we would sit and eat lunch and Dom would be there sitting and eating lunch with us. Like, are you fucking kidding me? And then she would always bring up, Dom always says that, like, you were, like, really bad in bed and, like, I'm really good at bed. And I'm like, oh, does he now? Like, you were literally dating someone who used your best friend and literally made her feel like shit about herself. And I just want to put out there, ladies, if you know a guy is using you, do not hold yourself to those standards of, like, what they're putting you at. It's fucked up. Don't let a guy do that to you, okay? Okay.
One time I found a man in my kitchen who I did not know, and normally I would be alarmed by that, but this man had the proportions of like an anemic noodle, and so I was just like, I can take him. And I said, who are you? And he said, oh, sorry, didn't mean to scare you. I'm actually dating your roommate, and she just told me I could hang out here until she got back. And I said, oh, she's actually been talking about you a lot. I'm surprised we're just now meeting. And he said, yeah, well, I'm trying to keep things slow with her since I just broke off my engagement. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, I was dating this girl, right? Her name was Claire. And we got to the point where I just felt like I was supposed to propose. And I thought, I'm not ready to be married, but I proposed. And then we were planning the wedding, and I just thought, I'm not ready for a wedding. And then the wedding day came, and I was just like, I'm not ready to be married. And then we were getting married, you know, and the man said, do you take this woman to be your wife? And I just looked into her eyes and I said, no. And I was so mad. And I told him, I was like, that's crazy. Who does that? And he said, the next thing he said, I'll never forget because it really pissed me off and it made no sense. He was just like, if you don't understand why I did that, then obviously you don't understand love. And I was like, okay, first of all, that was very condescending. Second, I don't understand love, but you've known me for like 12 seconds, so there's no way you could have figured that out by now. And third, there's so many better ways you could have handled that situation. You could have broken up with her the day before the wedding. You could have just like not proposed. And he said, yeah, but what would you do if it was your wedding day and you were looking into your partner's eyes and you realized you didn't want to marry them? And I said, well, I would go through with it for starters, and then afterwards I would just say, hey, I'm not feeling this anymore. What if we get a quickie annulment and then not tell anybody for 6 to 8 months? That way we can keep all the presents and divvy them up amongst ourselves. And then I said, I really hope she kept the engagement ring and bought herself an amazing breakup present after that. And he said, no, she wanted me to have the ring back because she knew how expensive it was. And I was like, I wouldn't have given the ring back. I would have kept it. If you said no to me at the altar, I would have just beat your ass. I would have just attacked you in my wedding dress. I would have taken off my stilettos and used them as a murder weapon. And then when I was in court later, obviously because there were witnesses to your murder, I would have said, but Your Honor, he dumped me on my wedding day in front of all of our family and friends. And the judge would be like, not guilty. And he said, can you please not make jokes? Because what I just shared with you was super personal. And the only reason I told you was because I felt like you really needed to hear it. And I was like, I just met you. I just came down here to get a hamburger. And your opener is that you're a runaway groom? Then when my roommate came home, I said, don't you think it's like a teensy-weensy red flag that he initiated a wedding he didn't want and then fled from it recently? And she said, no, Kate, I trust him. And I was like, so did Claire! Now she's in therapy. On behalf of single people everywhere, please stop setting us up unless your single friend comes to you and says, hey, do you know of anybody that you could maybe set me up on a date with? Just stop. We're so tired of you guys pimping us out to each other, and the people you set us up with are crazy. One time, I got set up on a date with a guy who didn't even like music. We were just driving and listening to AM radio, and I said, would you maybe like to listen to some music? And he said, no, thank you. I don't like music. And I thought he was joking. So I left. And then he said, no, really, I don't like music. I don't get what the hype is. Everyone's so obsessed with music. But when you think about it, it's really just different noise than what we're listening to right now. And I was like, sir, are you a serial killer? Because that sounds like something a serial killer would say. And if you are, could you please just calmly pull the car off to the side of the road, let me get out, and kill me there instead of making me listen to AM radio for the rest of our date? And another time, somebody set me up with a guy. She didn't even know. She met him one time, and he had a dog. And she was like, my friend Kate also has a dog. You guys should go on a date. And then she said, but Kate... She was trying to talk me into it later, and she was like, wouldn't it be so cute, though, if you guys fell in love and then your dogs fell in love? And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds like a solid basis for a relationship. And so I went on a date with the guy. He picked me up in the middle of winter. It was 30 degrees out. He took me to a park. We went on a walk. It was very cold. It was so cold. And so finally I said, I would like to not do this anymore. And he took me back to his car and he said, well, I just took you on a really long walk. Should I like feed you now or something? And I was like, should you feed me? First of all, yes, always. Second of all, have you been on a date with a human woman in a while, or like just your dog? And then when I tell people I don't want to get set up, they get sneaky about it. Like one time I got in a huge fight with my friend's fiance, and then she called me later. He was wrong, I was right, which is why I wasn't shocked when she said, hey, he feels really bad about what he did to you, so he bought you an extra ticket to come see stars with us tonight. And I thought that is so sweet. And so I went to go see stars with them. And while we were driving, he said, would you mind taking off your Seahawks beanie? And I said, no, why would I do that? And he said, well, not everybody likes the Seahawks. And I said, yeah, that's the whole point of sports. And then when we got to the movie theater, he had set me up on a date with his cousin. It was a trap. It was an actual trap. And his cousin said, ew, Seahawks, that's embarrassing for you. And I was like, your mom's embarrassed of you. And then he said, that was mean. I was just joking. And I was like, so was I. But apparently I hit a sour spot. I think I just accidentally on purpose catfished one of my friends of almost 8 years because I texted him and I said, hey, I'm working on this big project right now and it just happens to be the same thing that you do for work and I just had a couple questions for you. And he texted me back and he said, oh, hey, Max, that's super cool to hear. And my name is not Max. And I was like, ooh, he took a shot and he missed. He could have just said, new phone, who dis? He could have said, sorry, I don't recognize your number. He could have said anything else, but he wrote out a name? And also, how do you not have my number, dude? We've known each other 8 years, for starters. Second, was there some kind of a falling out that we had that you didn't tell me about? Because that would have been nice to know. And so anyway, I was like, fine, if he wants me to be Max, I can be Max. And it wasn't that I pretended to be Max, I just didn't correct him. And we kept talking, and then I started to feel bad because he was actually being super helpful. And I thought maybe I should set up a lunch to like chat with him a little bit more about this. And then when he arrives, he'll be like, where's Max? And I'll be like, surprise, bitch! But then he suggested to me that we should do a collab of some kind together. He's like, yeah, we can collaborate on a strategy together. He said we should collaborate on a strategy together if you want. It could be cool. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. And I was like, ooh, now I should really tell him that I'm not Max. But first, I went to his Instagram and I went to the list of people that he follows and I found Max, and Max is a lady. Max is a hot lady and she has abs, not just like the little starter pack of abs, but she has like 6 whole abs, and I zoomed in to make sure they weren't photoshopped, and they weren't. And now I don't know how to text him and be like, hey man, this isn't Max with the rock hard abs, this is Kate with the squishy everything. When I was in high school, a teacher was like, Kate Smith, I need to see you after class. And I said, am I in trouble? And he was like, only a little bit. And then I went to his desk after class. Everybody else had left. And he pushed a document across the desk. And he said, this document that I sent home for your mother to sign very clearly has her forged signature on it by you. And I was like, and then he said, I could lose my job if I don't send you a fresh form to have your mother actually sign this time. And I said, okay. So I went home and I got my mother's signature and then I brought it back in. And then he had saved the old document and he put the documents next to each other. And he said, now for the future, this is how I caught you. And this is what you should do next time to not get caught. And then he taught me how to forge my own mother's signature and suggested that I practice.
I took a handful of gap years between high school and college, so when I eventually went back to college, I was a little bit older than a lot of my classmates. And I went to school in Manhattan, and I met a girl in one of my classes who we hit it off, and we found out that we lived in the same neighborhood, which is a big deal when you live in Manhattan. So we're talking, and she says, hey, I'm having a party this weekend, you should come. I'm like, great. She adds me on Facebook, she adds me to the invite, I go home, I look at it. It's a themed party. Now, I love themed parties, and I go all out on these parties, right? But I'm looking at it, it's called the End of the World Party. And like somebody said, oh, I'm coming as a zombie. And then somebody specifically claimed Lara Croft Tomb Raider. And I'm like, man, these people are really getting into this. They're taking it seriously. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't really have anything and it's too late to go shopping, but I don't want to go not as dressed as anything. So I think about it. The previous year, I had been Rosie the Riveter for Halloween. I had a navy shirt. I had the official bandana, the little button. In the back of my mind, I'm like, Rosie the Riveter could probably kick some zombie ass. So I decide if I go to the party, that's what I'm going to go dressed as. So the night of the party rolls around and I'm sitting at home and I'm really tired. I worked 5 jobs. I went to school full time, but I decide, fine, I'm going to go. So I start to get dressed. So now I'm dressed as Rosie the Riveter, ready to kick some zombie ass. But it's kind of late and I'm kind of tired. So I decide, even though it's walking distance, I'm just going to jump in a cab. Therefore, I'm not going to stop at a liquor store. I check out what I have. At the time, I was working for the blind wine lady. Now, this wasn't a bottle of our wine, but instead it was like a really nice bottle of wine that I just happened to have laying around. So I decide I'm going to take it. Go downstairs. I get in a cab. I get there. I buzz. Somebody lets me up. It's a 5th floor walk up. I get up to the party. It's like blaring music. I open the door. The second thing I notice is that I don't think everyone at this party is exactly 21. It feels like a very young party, and that kind of has me backpedaling a little bit because I don't want to be involved. I am of age. But the first thing that I notice is that nobody, and I mean nobody else, is dressed in a costume. Now, it's not that bad because I just have my bandana, but I'm feeling embarrassed, but I'm not going to whip it off. So I'm like, all right, just play it cool, whatever. I go into the kitchen to make myself a drink to open my bottle of wine. And I noticed that they have like the cheapest vodka possible and then a bunch of Sunny Delight. And that's what everybody's drinking, which also freaked me out. So these kids are drinking like the cheapest vodka possible mixed with Sunny Delight, which still makes me giggle. And I have this very expensive bottle of wine, but it's all I have. So I open it up, I pour half a solo cup, and then I decide to go look for my friend. Well, I find her. She's in the living room grinding up on some grwm. Music is blaring. There's like people are smoking pot. Like the whole thing is just like filled with smoke. There's a balcony, which has way too many people on this balcony. Like I'm pretty sure it's going to break. And then I realize how much older I am than everybody, that I'm worrying about the stability of this balcony, and also that people are underage and I'm not. Anyhow, she sees me, she runs over, she gives me a hug, and then she's like, are you in costume? Did you really wear a costume? What are you? What is that? Doesn't understand it. Nobody gets it. Everybody's like, what's happening? Now I'm like the center of attention. I'm completely sober. Everybody's like wasted. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get out of here. Maybe I'll just stay for a little bit. And then this girl walks into the kitchen holding my super expensive bottle of wine. And she's like, guys, somebody left a bottle of wine in the kitchen. And then just starts chugging it. And it's like dripping down her face. And I was like, I'm just going to run to the bathroom, and I just left and went home.
Story time on how I became the most hated person in my family. Because I found my dad sleeping with my aunt, and I was not going to stay silent. So my aunt, let's call her Jenny, lived at my house. She was the disappointment of the family, didn't have a job, had 2 kids, wasn't taking care of her kids. Just a total mess. My mom decided to take her in because she wanted to help and she wanted to get her life straight. At first my dad didn't like it, but he had to deal with it because my mom told him to. She always said family is family and you can't give family your back. Well, maybe she should have done that. Because one day that I was supposed to be picked up by my dad from school, well, apparently he forgot. And my best friend's mom had to drive me home. And I'm knocking and knocking on the door. No one answers the door, but I do see my dad's car outside. So I'm wondering, what the hell is he doing? So I decided to call his phone and I hear it ringing, but he won't answer. I went through the back door because I remembered that my mom always left an extra key in the back door. They were doing the dirty on my mom's bed. The worst part is that my aunt was laughing. But my dad did feel bad. He did get up right away. I called my mom, told her what happened, and you guys know what she said? She said that I was making the whole thing up, that my dad would never do that, and that my aunt and him always hated each other, so she couldn't do that either. She came back home that day. My dad denied the whole thing, said that I was lying for attention, and that's why my whole family hates me now. They said that I tried to ruin my mom and her sister's relationship, and that they can't believe anything I say. And yes, my mom is still with my dad. I'm waiting till I have enough money to move out, because I just can't believe my mom didn't even believe me. Storytime on how my high school bully became my stepdaughter. A little backstory, let's call my bully Stephanie. Well, Stephanie loved to bully me in high school. There wasn't a reason other than she just did not like me. And I was very, very innocent, so I let her bully me. She even made up a rumor that I had an STD. That's how bad it was. Well, after high school, I decided to go to college for a year, but then I dropped out. I started working at a law firm, where I met my soon-to-be husband. And of course I didn't know it was her dad. I was working at the law firm only part-time, so I didn't spend much time with him, but we did fall in love really, really quick. We went out on dates first, and he did tell me he had a daughter, but he never showed me a picture of his daughter because he said he didn't have a good relationship with her. Well, for his birthday, we went out to dinner, and he did tell me that his daughter was gonna be there. So I wanted to make a good first impression. Well, we arrived at the restaurant and she still wasn't there. We knew that she was gonna come in a little later. Well, about 30 minutes later, I see Stephanie walking towards me, and I was so confused. I thought she was gonna come and say hi to me. And when she saw me next to her father, shit went down. We were at a very fancy restaurant. Well, she asked her father, let's call him Ben, what is she doing here? And he told her to not disrespect me like that because I was his fiance. Mind you, I was laughing because this shit was hilarious. Well, before she stormed out of the restaurant, she told her dad to never talk to her again and said that she would never forgive him. Well, long story short, he did ask me why she said that because he was a little curious of why I was laughing. I explained to him that she was my bully in high school and that she terrorized me for 4 years. And our wedding is in July.
I met this couple at a bar in New York City and we hit it off, and it turned out the husband was on a cooking reality show, and at first they thought I was a groupie, and then they realized I had no idea who he was. And at the end of the night, the woman gave me her number and told me to keep in touch. Well, a few months later, my cousin moved to New York City and he's living on my couch and I'm helping him get on his feet again. And I remember he has restaurant experience. So I reach out to the woman because her husband is the head chef at a very popular New York City restaurant. And through the wife, the husband says, this is great. Send him in on Monday morning. I have a lot of positions open. If I can help him, I definitely will. So I tell my cousin, this is a huge opportunity. We can't blow it. Monday morning, he gets all ready. I make sure he knows where he's going. And then I go to work. A few hours later, he calls me and he says, hey, that guy no longer works there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I talked to him 2 days ago. And he's like, I don't know. They're telling me he doesn't work there. And I'm like, you must be at the wrong place. So he goes outside, he takes a picture. He's at the right place. So I reach out to the wife and I'm like, I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand something? Because my cousin's at the restaurant. And she replies with funeral arrangements. The guy had a heart attack the night before. And the restaurant was in shock. And they weren't telling my cousin he didn't work there. They were saying he's no longer with us. I had just started dating this guy. Like, we had only been out a couple of times, and I went to watch him play kickball. He was on a league with some friends of his. And afterwards, we went back to his apartment so we could shower and change before we went out to dinner. Now, I had never been to his apartment. Again, we'd only been dating for like a month. So while he was in the shower, I go snooping around his apartment, and I find a piece of mail that is addressed to both of us, like his full name plus my full name. Now, you know me, active imagination. I start going through all the scenarios, but I try to play it cool. I put the mail back, I sit down on the couch, and I wait. When he's finished getting ready, he comes into the kitchen and he says, oh, I have something to show you. And he holds up the piece of mail, and I'm like, what? What is that? And I go into the kitchen and he says, well, I'd really like to take you on a date to the New York City Transit Museum, but I went ahead and got the membership because it allows you other opportunities, like you can tour the abandoned subway systems. And he says, but I put you on the membership because it also includes kids, and I thought that maybe you'd want to take your nanny kids one day. Don't worry, I married him.